Happy Tuesday, everybody. We are live week 8 of the NFL and of fantasy football. There's a lot going on, guys. I mean, there's some big news that just dropped about the Dolphins and Desean Watson. I'm telling you guys, things are happening, and it's week 8.
I didn't see this news because I've been traveling all day, and I'm also getting a lot of feedback. Like something, do you hear that?
I hear a little bit of a buzz. I don't know where that's coming from.
I'm hearing,
but it is the Buzz podcast, so it's possible.
Sure. I'm on the headset, so I don't know if that's me, but I'm not hearing a buzz. Well, you're on the Buzz podcast, so that makes sense.
Anyway, tell me what the.
Okay, so
tell me what
you're kind of breaking up, but here's the news.
There's been a lot of talk.
Yeah, so supposedly the terms of the deal for the Dolphins to get Desean Watson are done. The terms. We don't know what those terms are, but supposedly they've agreed on the compensation.
Wow.
But Stephen Ross is now saying that he's not going to pull the trigger, though, until we clear up the legal issue.
Right.
Now, we know that Roger Goodell has already said that he's not going to meddle into a situation until after the police or whoever is doing the investigation on this completes their investigation. So there's not going to be a problem with the NFL. He would be able to play this week if he wanted to. Houston just hasn't let him play. There's nothing stopping him from playing. But the Dolphins may not take him, knowing he's got these 400 assault charges and everything that goes along with it, whether it's civil, whether it's criminal, whether it's NFL. But the compensation side is agreed upon, and that's the part that's actually kind of scaring me, because I don't honestly want to give up.
That might be the easier part of the deal, not from what as fans we would like, but there's no way from a legal standpoint this is going away before the November 2nd trade deadline. There's no way that's being cleared up. So unless there's going to be some kind of compensation or concession that rolls back these 3 first-round picks plus additional picks, because we know that's what Houston wants, so the market's quieted a little bit and cooled a little bit. How could they possibly do that? So honestly, that's great news that they have terms. It doesn't mean anything, though, until the legal issues have gone away. That's not happening before November 2nd. So we're still a little up in the air, but it is interesting that they have come to an agreement.
But Desean Watson will be on my quarterback waiver list, so we're gonna talk about that.
So non fantasy wise, how does this affect now if they decide not to make this trade because of the legal aspects? Excuse me.
Bless you.
How does that affect Tua going forward?
It depends where Tua goes. If Tua is part of this trade, whether it's a 3-team trade or we don't know what the deal is or what's going to happen. Does Houston even want Tua? Are they?
That came out earlier that they don't. It came out earlier in the week that they have no interest in him. Although who knows? But that was reported by Houston Chronicle.
He's better than Tyrod Taylor. I don't see why they wouldn't want Tua. Carolina could get Tua as part of some 3-way deal. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. But if Desean were to come here, I would assume he doesn't start right away. He's got to learn the system. But I believe that he would start over Tua eventually if Tua did end up staying.
So let's have some fun. What we were doing in the preseason. Percentage chances.
He's probably been studying the Dolphins playbook now for the past 6 weeks because he hasn't been playing.
How would he have it? So remember we were doing this when the pandemic was in full swing, and we were looking at what's the percentage chance that the season happens. Let's do that here. Percentage chance that before the trade deadline, November 2nd, that this Desean Watson Miami Dolphins deal is completed. What do you say? What say you, Cyclops?
I say 90%.
That it's going to happen?
Yeah.
Wow. What about you, COmmish?
I'm at 33.333%.
33 repeating? Yes. I'm a little less optimistic, if you want to use the word optimistic, because I think Desean Watson is a talent. I think it's about 15%, because I don't know, with 22 civil charges out there that could develop into state charges, possibly federal charges. I don't know how they pulled that trigger, or none. But how do you pull the trigger? Especially, I know it's very, very recent, but Tua is really starting to play some, with some mistakes. So I don't see how it could happen before the trade deadline with these civil charges.
It'll be interesting. But as much as I would love to have a Miami Dolphins podcast, and maybe one day we will do that. I was actually on a feed last night on Twitter that somebody put together of just a bunch of Dolphin Twitter people talking and giving their opinion. And we did it for like an hour. It was a lot of fun. So as much as I would love to turn this into a Miami Dolphins podcast, it is a fantasy football podcast, and only a small amount of people care about the Miami Dolphins. We just happen to be in that group.
Right.
Right. So what we're going to do today, we're going to jump onto waivers. It is waiver day. Week 8. At this point, you would think that a lot of the good players aren't there. So now we're kind of talking streaming. We're talking about getting ready for the playoffs, right? So as part of our waivers, that's what we're going to have in mind. And then after that, we're going to talk about our disappointments. Where did we fuck up? And that's what we're going to get to later on. And we would love to hear what you all think as well. So if any of you have any questions, you want to know who to start, you want to know who to pick up, give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ or 2899, or you can plate your comment in YouTube Live or Facebook Live, and we will break off no matter what we're doing and get right to your questions. And then later on at around 8:40 p.m., we'll have our Kenneth question of the night. But for right now, guys, let's jump into our Week 8 waiver wire. But wait, like I said, we'll jump in if we have a question, right? And it looks like Travis. Welcome back, Travis, to the show.
Hey, Travis.
Do you think the Packers
Vampire Travis
Brandon Cooks? Is Houston like wheeling and dealing everybody at this point? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know.
They are.
I mean, could they?
They're saying that.
Yeah.
I know. No, yeah. I've heard it. I'm just saying. The Packers could definitely use them.
Yeah.
They're just decimated now thanks to COVID. But
that I mean, if they could get him, I certainly think that they would want him. Yeah. Right. To go along with Adams, like he'd be a great complementary receiver there. I mean, certainly Randall Cobb is doing what he can, but Cooks would be much, much better. The question is, what do they give up to get him? They're not going to give up a starter. It's going to be a draft pick. Houston, obviously they're going to move Watson potentially, and they'll end up a lot of draft picks. So they're already looking to the future. So if they can get rid of him at this point, and Green Bay could pick him up, absolutely. I don't know if it can happen or not, but I would do it.
Yeah. I think Green Bay is a really good landing spot, as is New Orleans. Thomas is eventually going to come back, but they don't have any pass catchers there. Callaway's widely inconsistent. Traquan Smith's all over the place. I can see New Orleans. But yes, Houston is looking like they're about to have their fire sale. The new GM there is about to clean house. So that would be very, very interesting spot for him. Travis, we want to hear we want to hear how you did in your vampire league this week. I want to know, did you win? Who did you end up poaching? But you have us all really, really interested in what you have there. So we have another question that we are going to post, which is, who would be – oh, no, I posted the wrong thing. Sorry about that. There we go. Who is the best flex option to trade for right now? I mean, that's a good question because you can have so many guys. Usually your flex is your RB3 or a wide receiver 3. And I got to tell you –
Go ahead.
I think right now, to me, I love Damien Harris. This guy, for anyone that was smart enough to draft him, and then he was a very early on waiver pickup wire. This guy, this is a running team. They love to run him. James White gone. Ramondre Stevenson benched, inactive. They've got Brandon Bolden and this guy in J.J. Taylor. This is a great defense. They're going to run some more, even without getting the catches. I love Damien Harris as a flex option for the entire rest of the year.
Well, its question is whether or not somebody's going to trade him. Obviously, there's a premium on running backs in fantasy football. So being able to find that running back might be a little difficult. Somebody like Chase Edmonds, somebody may not be convinced yet that that Chase Edmonds is really going to continue doing what he's been doing. But, we got to be realistic in what's available. And I think that somebody like T. Higgins, that people have forgotten about, that if you remember at the beginning of the season, he was the guy that everybody thought out of the three receivers, right, between Boyd and Chase, that Higgins would be the man. Then he got hurt. He had that shoulder injury. And since he's been back, his target share has been increasing each week. It went from 20 to 22 to 43. So T. Higgins is coming back, and Tyler Boyd is actually dropping a little bit. So you could probably get Higgins off of somebody's roster. He's probably been sitting on somebody's bench waiting for these bye weeks to be able to fill him in. But he might be a good guy to think about moving forward. It's not somebody that's going to win you a championship, but it is somebody that I think realistically you might be able to get in a trade.
You're right. You're right. You can't. Go ahead, Cyclops.
No, I'm saying when you're looking for a flex, you're looking for someone to get you those 15 points, with an upside, or 12 points with a 20-point upside, to just, boost your points. So, yeah, someone like that. There's some other people, like we were talking about it before, like a Jalen Waddle, who people like probably aren't that big on, but he's getting receptions, he's getting yards, he's getting the targets, right? So if you could put someone in that flex spot, and he's maybe a name that he's on people's rosters, but maybe he's not that coveted to keep, right? So maybe that's a person that you can try to get and trade for to boost your flex spot.
He's also along with a guy like Courtland Sutton, people that I would trade away to get a Damien Harris, only because you got Jerry Jeudy coming back, who's most likely going to assume that alpha role, and Courtland Sutton's 10, 12 targets a week are going to start diminishing. So it's a good time to trade away a guy like him to get a Damien Harris or another good running back like that, or a Jalen Waddle, who's got Devontae Parker right around the corner from coming back, and a healthy Preston Williams. So now you're going to see Waddles, and I love him, but with Williams and Parker there, his targets are really diminished. So one of the things you want to look at with receivers is obviously target share is up as all these other receivers are starting to be healthy and come back. These are times to trade these guys to get these other guys that are dominating either running back share or target share.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And if you're looking about selling high, people like Noah Fant, Corey Davis, these are guys that if you have them, sell them now. These are guys that you could trade away in order to get some of the other guys that you might want to buy low, like a Higgins or even somebody like Darren Waller. Maybe somebody's afraid right now, based on the injury, that he may not come back to be the same guy. And if you get the nerve of the person who he's a little scared, and he already had to pick up somebody to cover for him, maybe he's willing to trade him. And he's somebody you could definitely buy. All right, let's move on. The next question from Kenneth. Joe Flacco. No, he was traded from the Eagles to the Jets, not to the Eagles. It was a conditional 6th-round pick that can be boosted into a 5th-round pick. It has zero fantasy relevance right now. Mike White came in and filled in, supposedly, if you want to use that term, filled in. Former USF Bull, former University School Shark. Mike White. So,
really? He went to Nova. Yeah. Very cool. University. Yeah.
Yep. So, but yeah, Joe Flacco. They just need somebody to fill in. I'm actually surprised it's for so much.
Right. The only fantasy relevance there is Cincinnati Bengals are a really nice streaming defensive play this week because they're playing the Jets. But I don't care if it's Smith or Flacco. That makes Cincinnati a nice play.
Yep. Okay. So, I think it's a big impact. Oh, okay. This was when we were talking about Brandon Cooks.
Waiting
All right,
for my.
What do we got here? Travis Henderson didn't do as good as I thought he would, but yeah, Henderson. Everybody was on the Henderson train this past week,
especially against Detroit, right?
Right.
Yeah,
and that game was a lot closer than.
But you know what? He's still a stud running back, but even the stud running backs have an off week here and there. Overall, Henderson's been absolutely solid, though.
All right, so
Daniel, let me put up here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Daniel put his team up here. So he's got Josh Allen, Eckler, Damien Harris, Diggs. Nice looking team. Thielen, Joey Galloway. I'm thinking you may want to trade.
Did you say Joey Galloway?
Joey Galloway.
Well, I think it's probably Galladay.
Marquez Galloway, right?
Or Joey Galladay.
So we're not sure. But your team, you have a nice looking team. You have a solid team.
Yeah, I would be patient on Diggs. Don't panic on Diggs. He's still getting the targets.
I just traded for Diggs.
Yeah, maybe we know you did. Try to steal him from another team for nothing.
Maybe see if you can rape one of your league members to get a Diggs by giving up like a Calvin Ridley maybe or something like that. And see, right,
exactly,
right, exactly.
All right, we do have a question from Kellen here. Eckler and Diggs for Kamara, Michael Thomas, and Hawkinson. I get Eckler side and Schultz is my backup. All right, Schultz is a nice backup. Now, keep in mind, you do have Gallup coming back, so he may lose a couple targets with Gallup coming back. But let's see, he gets Eckler.
So you're giving up Kamara, Michael Thomas is a wash, and Hawkinson, and he already has Schultz, and he's getting Eckler and Diggs. I got to tell you, I like that. Eckler has been outstanding. Kamara just erupted, but Eckler has been unworldly or otherworldly. And Diggs, I like the upside here with Eckler and Diggs to give up Kamara, Michael Thomas, and Hawkinson.
Let us know if this is a PPR. I mean, actually. Right. Excuse me, Eckler and Kamara have the exact same amount of points in a half PPR league. So that's a wash. So the question really then comes to, are we looking at the rest of the year being a wash? I think it is. I think you can anticipate that the Kamara Eckler deal will be a wash.
I love this
deal. Whether or not Diggs for Hawkinson is worth it, and the Michael Thomas. Now, Michael Thomas supposedly will not come back until around Christmas. So if you think you're good enough to make the playoffs, then having Michael Thomas is great. But if you need somebody to get to the playoffs, grab Diggs. I think that's your play right now.
Yeah, and he's got Schultz as the backup, so he doesn't need Hawkinson. So Schultz is like a top 5 tight end.
Eckler did have a bad game in his last outing, but I think they'll correct that. That was just, I think, a tough game for the Chargers all around. So I think it's okay. It says
it's a full PPR. Then I absolutely love it because Eckler gets so many catches, as does Kamara,
as Hawkinson and Diggs. So
and Diggs too, exactly.
I would do that trade, and of course, I also, Kellen, I don't know who your other receivers are. Obviously, you haven't been starting Michael Thomas, so who is going to be benched for you to play Diggs? So that's another question. Travis lost by 1.3 points. But the question on who to start this week between Cook, Henderson, Robinson, or Taylor. First of all, you can never sit Taylor. He's one of those guys you start every single week. If you're only looking for one player, it's 100%. Taylor. If you're looking for two players, Robinson, look at what he's done the past 3 weeks.
But do you really sit Dalvin Cook?
What?
Do you really sit Dalvin Cook?
Brandon Cooks or Dalvin Cook?
No, that's Dalvin Cook.
That's Dalvin Cook. Yeah, that's tough.
Right.
How do you sit him?
Vampire League, so he's grabbed all these people.
I assume he's talking
Taylor and Cook. You got.
Yeah, Cook.
Cook's going against
2 out of the 4.
Yeah, and they're going against Dallas, who's got a decent defense.
That's just an embarrassment of riches.
From a guy that didn't draft in the league. Right. This vampire thing is really, really interesting.
This week, I actually have Dalvin Cook number 2, and I've got Jonathan Taylor number 3 after Derrick Henry.
There's your answer.
So you can just flip a coin here. They're going to get very similar points. Taylor goes up against Tennessee, but Dalvin Cook plays against Dallas on Sunday night. So that's going to kind of be a shootout. Who knows?
Yeah.
The weather, what kind of impact that's going to have. It's in Indy, so we don't have to worry about weather for Taylor.
As the vampire in this league, are you able to make trades? Because if you can, with Cook, Henderson, Robinson, and Taylor, I would look to trade Robinson or Henderson to get to bolster up your wide receivers. You've got 4 high-quality running backs there. I don't know what your positions are like. You probably start a flex. Maybe you do. I don't know. But be very interesting to hear that.
All right. Well, guys, thanks so far for the questions. This is great. This is what we're here for. We're here to answer all of your lineup questions, your waiver questions, your trade questions. We're here for you. All right. So give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ, or You can just comment like the other people have so far on YouTube Live or on Facebook Live, and we will answer your questions right away. Guys, let's jump right into waiver wire, and we're gonna start with wide receivers today.
Wide receivers. Let's do it. Caught me off guard. Okay.
Oh, sorry about that. Would you like
me
to start with quarterback?
No. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right. So, with the recent news of the COVID people, with Adams,
the COVID people,
yeah, aka Packers.
Is that like the Village people? But
Randall Cobb, right, becomes a huge pickup this week. Thursday night game. They're playing against Arizona. They're going to have to throw to keep up in this game. So Randall Cobb, he's Rodgers' guy. He's the guy he brought in back to Green Bay to be part of this team. So if he's out there and you can get him, he should be out there. He's not owned in a ton of leagues. He's a guy that you want to pick up this week, assuming that both of those guys are not going to play because they have to have 2 negative COVID tests before Thursday. So that's going to be tough to get, if they just tested positive yesterday. It's amazing how all these people and coaches test positive on Mondays, but never Sundays. Isn't that interesting? Okay. Number 2, Michael Gallup. Okay. He's coming off his injury. He's going obviously into a potent offense. He's kind of the forgotten guy there behind Lamb and
Cooper.
Amari Cooper, thank you. And behind Amari Cooper, Cooper hasn't been doing a ton. So Gallup should, plug into that offense right now and be able to get looks. They're obviously throwing the ball a lot. They're moving the ball. So if he's out there, he's available in a lot of leagues as well. He's a good guy to get onto your roster. I have 2 more guys that I like. Rashard Bateman, I talked about him last week. Now he is on bye this week, but he is getting looks. He only had 3 catches the other day in the game against Cincinnati, but it was for 80 yards.
Yeah,
he led the team in receiving yards, so he is getting the looks. He's got 6 targets in each of the past 2 games, I believe. So he's a guy, again, if he's still out there, try to get him on your roster, even though it's a bye week. And the last is Khalil Raymond in Detroit. I know it's tough to talk about picking up Detroit guys, but these are his last 5 games. 8, 7, 2, so that's, low. 6 and 10 targets. Okay, he's got 6 catches in the last 2 games, so 12 total catches. So he is getting the targets. He's getting catches. They get Philly this week. So if you want a guy to pick up with a potential high upside, Philly can't stop a turtle right now, right? Tampa tore him up last week. Goff isn't a bad quarterback, so he's getting the ball out. He's making decent decisions. They just can't win. They're just not winning because they're not an overall very good team.
He may not be bad, but he's the opposite.
But he's not a good one. I was just going to say, but he's not a good one.
Yeah, but he's not up here. But he's going to get the ball out to receivers. So if it's a guy that you're looking for a 1 week gap, maybe you have people on bye, whatever the case may be, I think he's a good option this week. So there's 4 potential guys. Now on to you.
Right.
Well, just one thing to add: if you missed out on Randall Cobb, take a peek at MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He is slated to come off IR.
Yeah,
and he can play this week. And they think that the word is they're hopeful that he can. And even so, if you miss on Cobb, go after MVS because Rodgers has to throw to somebody.
Yeah, we've seen this with Valdez-Scantling. Last year, I picked him up for a game, and he sucked. And I know he's the USF guy. I just have a bad taste in my mouth about him. And
but they don't have any choices right now, so
that's true.
Well, you heard it here. You heard it here first. Scantling left a bad taste in Brad's mouth. So
yes, I know that.
Want to iron that one out later after the show, possibly. So yeah.
All right. So Jay needs 2 receivers for this weekend. He's got Julio, Sutton, Marvin Jones Jr., the return of Jerry Jeudy, and Claypool. That's like my team.
Wow.
Um,
A lot of speculative wide receiver twos, right?
Yeah, I mean,
all right. So
these guys
I'll
can put
jump
up 0 or 90 on
Any one of
any
them.
given day.
Right.
I'm going to jump in here first. I'm going to go with Claypool and Jones Jr.
You know what's crazy? I'm the same way. Just because we don't know what it's going to look like in Denver with Judy coming back. You know, it's the Claypool. Jones is getting the targets, and Julio, forget Julio. So I agree. I would honestly go with the two lesser quality in Claypool Jones versus Judy and Sutton.
All right, so I'm going to confuse
Claypool,
everything, and I'm going to go with Sutton and Claypool here. We saw what Sutton's been doing lately. Claypool, on any given Sunday, right? They're still dealing with – they don't have Juju. So that three-headed monster is now a two-headed monster. It means more targets, more receptions for Claypool. They play against Cleveland. It's not the best matchup. The best matchup is probably Marvin Jones Jr. against Seattle.
Right.
But it's so hard, and this is coming from somebody who has Marvin Jones, who's going to be sitting on the bench this week, is that you just don't know who's going to get the ball in a given week. And this, you like to say, well, the same thing with the Steelers, same thing with Denver, but right now Sutton and Claypool, I think, are more of a sure deal. That doesn't mean, look, Marvin Jones has a really high ceiling. There's a really big upside. When they played against the Dolphins, Marvin Jones was just first half got nothing. Second half got every target. So there's really no way to predict it. All I can tell you right now is you got to go with either Sutton, Marvin Jones, Claypool. Did anybody say Julio? Did either of you guys?
Nobody said Julio.
Yeah, okay. So it's either Sutton, Marvin, or Claypool. So that's where we stand on this. What do we got here? Who's asking, would you trade Deontay Johnson for Chris Carson? Is that what you want to know that, Brad?
Did you
So Brad from North Carolina wants to know, would you trade Deontay Johnson for Chris Carson?
Hold on. The real question, hold on a second. Would you trade Deontay Johnson for Chris Carson and Cortland Sutton? You get Carson and Sutton.
If you get Carson and Sutton, yeah, I'll probably do that.
And Deontay Johnson is not cracking your starting lineup because you have Jamar Chase, DeAndre Hopkins, and Chris Godwin.
I would probably.
Thank you.
That. Okay, so
thank you.
Okay, so
you left out Cortland Sutton from that equation.
All right, guys,
didn't you?
Let's jump to quarterbacks. But of course, listen, we're going to talk about some quarterbacks here. But give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ, or you can always comment in YouTube Live or Facebook Live, and we'll jump right in and answer all of your questions. As far as waivers, who's out there to pick up? The first one I'm going to talk about is Jameis Winston. We all saw him last night. He didn't do great. He didn't do poorly. But we could see that week over week, he's actually getting a little better. Believe it or not, in the past 4 weeks, he's only had one interception. And I shouldn't be too shocked about that, except we know that Jameis Winston was an interception machine. He's getting a lot of yards. He got a lot more yards the other night. And we don't know what the timetable is with Michael Thomas, but as soon as Michael Thomas comes back, he's going to be even more valuable. So if Winston is available, I think he might be the guy, even for this week, even without Michael Thomas, because they're playing against the 30th ranked defense against quarterbacks. And believe it or not, that's actually Tampa Bay. So, look, you can hold on to him. You can use him for later. He's got some matchups against Atlanta and Dallas and Miami, Carolina. So he's actually somebody good that you might be able to utilize.
Can I mention something here about him? I watched a lot of that game. The weather was bad. All of a sudden they figured out how to get Kamara the ball using Winston, right? He had 15 catches going into the game last night for the season. And last night he had, I think, 9, right? So all of a sudden those runs have turned into screens and getting him the ball in different places. So I would look for that to continue as well, which will add to his passing totals. And he, with the weather so bad, and they were still taking shots downfield. So I think they're, even with the weather bad, they were still opening up the offense, which I look at as a positive for Winston going forward. And it's a revenge game, right?
That's true.
It is a revenge game.
And I don't know if y'all heard. I don't know if y'all guys watched the game last night, but they had Drew Brees on. The Manning brothers had Drew Brees on the ESPN2 broadcast, and that broadcast, I just can't say enough about how incredible it is. Yeah. So they had Drew Brees, and they kept asking him questions like, "What do you think of the offense? Is this the same offense?" And Brees just looked at the camera. He would not answer because he had.
What's he going to say?
If you had nothing good to say against,
don't say it, right?
Winston. No, he did say, look, that nobody works harder than Winston. That Winston is in every meeting and every, he knew the playbook right and left. Like he followed Brees around. So there's that. But I think he's kind of. It must be tough for Brees to see that offense being played, that Sean Payton offense, without him. Being in charge and
it's a shame because their defense is elite now. They have an elite defense that, coupled with a good offense right now, they can make a total run for it. And he was there for a couple of years of those good of that defense because it's been getting good for a couple of years. I'll tell you what was interesting, and then we'll get off this. I love Jameis Winston's passion and how much he cares about the game. If you watched the interaction with him and Traquan Smith, I mean, he is caring about the little things, lining up right, running the routes right. They really got into it. It's a different Jameis Winston in New Orleans than what we saw in Tampa Bay. That's for sure.
And they're still 4-2, so they're right in the mix of everything. Yeah, and I think Winston is figuring out more, and they're opening up the playbook more. I think for the second half of the season, you'll see that come about. We do have another question here. This is an interesting one. Okay, should I trade DK and Saquon for Najee Harris? He says he does have good receiver depth and needs a healthy running back this week because he's 2-5.
I would do that trade, depending on if you have wide out depth. Because Russell Wilson, he's supposed to be back in a couple of weeks, which all of a sudden does make Metcalf relevant again. I'd love to hear who your wideouts are. But Najee Harris is literally not only is he running, but he's the target after Deontay Johnson, workhorse in that offense. He is excelling. I like the trade, to be honest with you. I really do.
Commish?
I like the trade too. It's just that he said the problem is he's 2-5, right? So he needs to do something. So you've got to start looking at the high ceiling players. It's hard to say that Najee isn't a high ceiling because he's been getting 20 to 25 points every week, right? So you could say, well, when Saquon comes back, and he's got a small chance of coming back this week, but most likely it's going to be week 9, Saquon has that chance of getting you the 25 to 30 points every week as well. And then if you already have the depth and you don't need DK, then at least you know that for right now, Najee is healthier. As long as he doesn't hit that rookie wall, he's healthier than Barkley. I guess I'd pull the trigger depending on who my other wide receivers
are. At 2-5, you have to win now. You have to win like 6 of your next 7. Or, I don't know what your league is like, but at 2-5, you have very little margin for error in wins losses. So I would pull that trade off. Yeah.
He said he has Ridley, Mike Williams, AJ Brown, Judy, and Waddle. So you know what? I'm pulling the trigger on this. I'm pulling the trigger on this trade. I say do it. Najee Harris, I think, again, unless he hits that rookie wall, but so far he's looked good. He's looking better as the season is going on. And I do this. Saquon's going to come back, but I mean, the guy's just so injury prone. He does have that upside, but I think for steadiness throughout the season and especially this week, because you have to win, get Harris.
Another interesting trade question here. Would you trade Woods or Amari and Ruggs for Mike Williams? So just Woods by himself for Mike Williams? Oh my God. Yeah. Or Amari Cooper.
I'm reading this a little different. I'm reading it that it's either Woods or Amari with Ruggs
Oh,
or
trade.
Mike Williams.
Yeah, I think
Either one. Ruggs to me, I mean, he's
Ruggs
a
is a
fine
throw-in.
player, but he's a throw-in. So I would go Woods and Ruggs or Amari and Ruggs, honestly, for Williams. You got CeeDee Lamb. No one receiver is dominating crazy right now in Dallas. Gallup's coming back. Schultz is taking a lot of it. So I would give up Amari to get Mike Williams, who has just been blowing it up.
Brad, if you have the choice in this trade, then I would trade Woods and Ruggs for Williams and hold on to Amari.
I think I'm on that end of I think I'm on that end of the spectrum as well, doing it for Woods.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
Woods and Ruggs for Mike Williams.
Go out and get Mike Williams.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
You're only getting 10 points a week from Woods. Maybe somebody will talk about him in the disappointment section when we talk about it later. But thank you for the comment. We do appreciate that, Brad. And if anybody has any other comments, go ahead. You can give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ, or you can comment in YouTube Live or Facebook Live, and we will break in and get right to your question. We were talking about quarterbacks and who to pick up for this week. Somebody who may or may not play this week is actually Tyrod Taylor. He's only had one game as the quarterback for Houston, and he shocked everybody when he threw for almost 300 yards and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions in that game. Now, he does play against the Rams, right? So they're going to feast, but he definitely has good potential. So if you're in a you're in a super flex league or a 2 quarterback league, he might be somebody to take a look at. Can I mention something here? Yeah.
So Tyrod Taylor last season, right? So they just came out. The coach said, when Taylor started our season and he's our quarterback, so when he's healthy, he's our quarterback, right? Now Mills obviously is not doing great. He's just there. But last year when Herbert took over, right? They said the same thing, but when Taylor was healthy, it was no. We're going to go ahead and stick with Herbert, right? So it's all a matter of what you have.
Well, I think even more interesting is last year he played 0 games to start the season, and this year he played 1 game to start the season before he got injured. That's unbelievable, and he's not a bad quarterback. So, yeah.
All right. So we talked about Tua last week, and I said, here's somebody that is on the up and up. You should really grab him. The Dolphins don't have a running game. They're going to be throwing. Well, now he's put together 2 solid fantasy. I mean, forget Dolphin fans right now. He's actually put together 2 solid fantasy performances after coming back from his injury. He almost threw for 300 yards last week, 4 touchdowns. Yes, he had 2 interceptions, but he also ran for 30 yards. So, I know he played against the Jags and he played against the Falcons, so I'm not suggesting you necessarily stream him this week against Buffalo, who shut out the Dolphins the last time they played. But if you need a quarterback, he's there, or if you want somebody moving forward. Now, we throw in the idea of the Desean Watson possible trade. We don't know where Tua's going to end up. If he stays with Miami and Watson is here, then he's useless. But if he ends up being the starting quarterback in Houston or in Carolina or wherever, he probably even has more potential depending on where he goes. So those are the quarterback. That's the quarterback situation. Looks like we have Matt wants to know what our thought on Cadarius Tony. Are you asking about whether or not he's healthy, or what is the prognosis moving forward as far as him being a fantasy player? Because if he's healthy, the guy's just turning into a target monster.
And he's only owned in less than 44% of ESPN leagues, so he doesn't look like he's going to sit out much longer. If he's available, and if you have the roster space for him, this guy is a week changer. He shakes people out of their shoes. I love him if you can get him. And he should be back
this week against Kansas City.
Oh my God, I love him. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
all right.
That's our thought on that. Let's jump right to running backs, guys. Oh, we got a
All
call.
right.
Give me 1 second here.
You got a call. All right.
Hey, Kenneth, how are you?
Hey, pretty good. Y'all told me to wait till now, so that was what I was doing.
All right. Do you have a question tonight?
My question of the night, I'm interested to get y'all's take in regards. I've been hearing word about some changes that are supposed to be made to that Rooney Rule situation. I don't know if y'all have heard about it, and if y'all have, I was wanting to get y'all's take on it.
Well, the Rooney Rule itself, I know about. As far as what changes they were thinking of doing, I don't know much about that. Do you know? Do you want to fill us in?
All I know is I've heard word. I've heard about this via NFL.com. They mentioned something about having some enhancements made to that particular rule.
Well, Kenneth, not all of our listeners know what that rule is. Why don't you explain what the rule is?
But the league did make a change to
Uh-oh.
the Rooney Rule regarding
Do
the
you hear this?
hiring of coaches and coordinators.
Mhm.
It's something that goes into effect immediately. How exactly has it changed?
All right, so we won't go into the whole detail, but the bottom line with regard to the Rooney Rule is that you have to interview African American coaches. Right. You don't have to hire them, but you have to at least give them a chance. And it's it's easy to say we don't need to do this because we don't have systemic racism in the NFL. But I think we've seen, especially recently with John Gruden, that it is alive and well. Racism is alive and well in the NFL.
Or alive and unwell.
Let's get back. That doesn't have any fantasy impact at the moment.
Right.
But we do have another question from Luke here. Luke, thanks for the question.
I do.
Oh, sorry, Kenneth. I didn't mean to cut you off. If you have a question, go ahead and either call us back or
So, Luke, is this a who to start, Devontae Booker or Cordell Patterson? Yeah, start. I don't know how you ever sit Cordell Patterson at this point. He's got that offense.
Yeah. And
he's lighting it up. So I definitely go Cordell Patterson over Devontae Booker, and I'm pretty sure my cohorts are going to feel the exact same way. All right, we got a lot to cover. So let's go into our running back waivers. Not a ton of exciting running backs out there, but obviously let's address the most obvious, which is the injury to Miles Sanders, which gives you the option of a couple people to go after. But in order of who I would pick, and I'm going to start with Kenneth Gainwell. Currently sitting at the running back number 30, only owned in 26% of ESPN leagues. What I like about him, Sanders went down. He only got 5 carries for 20 yards, but 8 targets. Again, only 4 catches, but 8 targets. He is the target guy there. Had 41 yards and a touchdown. So this is a team that does not run the ball. Even when Sanders was healthy, they throw, and then they throw some more. So in terms of who you might want to go after, if you're looking to fill in because you have bye weeks or your running backs are just lacking, I would go after Kenneth Gainwell first in this situation to fill in for the injured Miles Sanders.
Are you worried about Boston Scott?
I'm not. No. I'm worried about the Boston Scott role. And what I mean by that is I believe Gainwell is going to be your third down, you're out of the backfield, 7, 8, 9, 10 targets a game. They just activated Jordan Howard off the practice squad. So you're between the tackles is now good. I know, right? Throw open your mouth. Throw open your mouth good. But what's going to happen is Jordan Howard and Boston Scott, again, conjecture, are going to be the ones splitting those early down reps and that between the tackle runs, and Kenneth Gainwell is going to get his 10, 12, targets a game. That's a lot. And maybe 3, 4, 5 handoffs as well. So of this 3-headed monster that's about to resume, I like Gainwell. He's not going to share that role with anybody. Boston Scott and Jordan Howard most likely will. So if you miss on Gainwell, then yes, you have Boston Scott, who again is probably going to be the early down back. I don't see Howard coming in and getting an enormous amount of reps in his first game back, but he'll get some. Again, only if you're missing on Gainwell. Yeah, would I go after Boston Scott? He had 7 rushes last week, had 20 yards. He did get the touch, so he might get those goal line tugs, which are good. Receptions aren't there though. He's had 4 targets all year, so that's why I like Gainwell if you're going after them. My third guy that you might want to look at picking up is actually Brandon Bolden. James White gone. Brandon Bolden in. He is the new James White. Is he as good as James White? No, he's not. But he has that role all to himself. Ramondre Stevenson in the doghouse missed a key block, gave up a sack. He's out. J.J. Taylor did the same thing. He gave up a sack. You know the way Belichick is. You make a mistake once and you're done for a while. Bolden not getting any rushes at all. But from a target standpoint, 7 targets last week, 6 grabs, 80 yards, and a touch, put up 20 points. So this is a team that's got a great defense. Game script is not hurting them where they have to throw some more. They are doing it on the ground. Mac Jones doesn't like to throw the ball more than 7 yards. Who's he going to be throwing into? Brandon Bolden. I actually like him, not just as a desperation play, but I like him as a possible flex going forward. And is he available? Yeah, he's owned in 5% of ESPN leagues. And there's only really one more interesting guy out there, and I like this guy as well, and that's Samaj P Ryan. Why do I like him? Because they're trying to conserve Joe Mixon. They don't want to give the guy 300 carries this year and waste him down. This is a team that can truly make a run for it. So with a fairly healthy Joe Mixon right now, P. Ryan put up nearly identical numbers. I love the consistency. Last week, week 7, 11 rushes, 52 yards, and a touchdown, 14.5 points. Week before that, 11 rushes again, 59 yards, no touchdown, but he had 18.5 points. Why? He had 5 targets, 4 grabs, 24 yards, and a receiving touchdown. So that's back-to-back weeks with touchdowns. It's a very similar to a Kareem Hunt role, except it's not as much the catches, but he's coming in and getting a lot of nice runs with Mixon on a really, really good team right now. The Bengals are proving a lot of people wrong, thinking that they were going to have a tough time this year without getting Penei Sewell. So I do like Samaj P Ryan. He has been looking good, a real interesting pickup. And that's all we got for running back waivers this week.
I think one of the things you're going to see in the middle of the season here on some of these teams, and not that we haven't seen it in the past, but with the extra game this year, right? You have 17 games instead of 16. I think you're going to see teams try to mix in those, secondary running backs a little bit more that maybe you haven't seen in the past, just to get those, starting running backs a little bit more rest to elongate their season so they're not getting hurt. I think it may not be incredibly noticeable, but I think it will be somewhat noticeable.
Question that was just asked is JD McKissick?
You keep hitting it
because it's on a delay. This stupid thing. Okay, we're doing a strobe by for those of you with epilepsy. I'm sorry. Is JD McKissick worth picking up? Absolutely. With the stress fracture in his shin with Antonio Gibson, he's not really getting the catches. And Taylor check down Taylor. McKissick's a good flex option. He is if you don't have anything better. Absolutely.
I think you're throwing around the word good a little too much. I mean, there are plenty of people that you can probably pick up, including some of the ones that 2020 mentioned earlier, whether it's Michael Carter or even Singletary against Miami. I mean, there are some guys that you might want to stream before McKissick, but McKissick's right around there. I have him as my RB 35 this week.
He's the 24th ranked running back in football. That's a very good flex option. He's ranked number 24 of all running backs. That's a legit bona fide RB3 or flex. The guy's putting up his average. It depends again if it's a PPR. The guy gets a lot of targets, and catches.
One big week.
Yeah, he's only averaging 8 points a week. I say only, but if you don't have any choices or all your, like last week, I had my 2 starting running backs, Robinson and Cook on bye. So I had to pick up people. So if
Right.
you're in that situation, you have to pick up somebody. Sure, McKissick might be somebody you could stream.
Right.
All right, Brad, did you have tight ends? Or you
I have a
didn't
couple.
prepare?
I have a couple of tight ends. I just have 2. I
Okay.
have Tanyan, right,
Sure,
in Green
big
Bay
week.
for the same exact reason I gave you for Randall Cobb.
Right.
Okay, he's not getting a ton of targets this year. He's getting a little bit here and there. It's a streamer. But for this week, again, with the COVID situations, he should be in for extra targets. So that's your number 1 tight end for the week. The second is CJ Uzmaha. Uzmaha
Zuma.
in
Uzmaha,
Cincinnati.
Uzmaha.
Okay.
Who's your
Uzmaha.
mama?
Uzmaha.
Who's your mama? Who's your Mazzilli?
Anyway, he only has I think 6 catches. Is that right? The
Yeah,
last
but they've
2
all been
weeks?
for touchdowns.
But they're all touchdowns.
But
They're all
three
for
of-
like 50
three of
yards.
them- right. 3 of them have been for touchdowns, so he's making the most of it. Again, Burrow's starting to look at him a little bit more in the red zone situations, and that's good if you got a tight end. If you can snag a touchdown as a tight end and 30 yards and a couple catches, it's a 10, 11, 12-point week. You're a tight end, and for a streamer, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the 2 tight ends that I have. There's not much else out
All
there.
right.
That's great. Okay, so what we talked about doing, we wanted to talk about some of the disappointments. It's tough sometimes to look at your roster, look at your record. I mean, unless you're doing really well, it's hard to look at it and think, man, if I only did this, or I shouldn't have done this. And I wanted to find out from you two and also from everybody out there, what were your biggest regrets so far? What were the boneheaded plays, the things that are not plays, but, your lineup moves or your drafting? What did you do to mess up? So that's what I want to talk about. So if you have that, give us a call at 772-800-BUZZ or comment YouTube Live, Facebook Live. Let us know what are some of your biggest disappointments or regrets. And I'm going to start off this whole talk right now, and that's drafting Calvin Ridley so high.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the 2nd pick in the draft. I grabbed Alvin Cook, and coming back around in the 2nd round, I grabbed Calvin Ridley. Now, every expert, everyone thought without Julio, Calvin Ridley, who was great already, is going to get even better. And with the threat of Kyle Pitts, it'll pull the safety off. He's going to have all these one-on-one matchups, and Ridley will just tear it up. And quite frankly, he has not done that. And he has been banished from my team.
Traded.
And he's now on Bruno's team. So that drafting Calvin Ridley in the 2nd round is my biggest regret. What are some of yours? I've got one here that you've put up here. Antonio Gibson 2020 seems to make your number 1 list.
Yeah. I mean, he's not doing bad. He really isn't. But he's certainly not doing what I drafted him and expected him to do. And I have him in 2 leagues. And there's other guys that we passed up. Gibson was a late 1st round, early 2nd round guy. And he's not performing at the draft capital that was invested in him. And, some of it's not his fault with this stress fracture. And, but, that's what happens. The 2nd round running back, this 2nd year running back who was a wide receiver. The question is how much and how long can he carry the load? You get worried about that sophomore slump that sometimes running backs, usually it's more reserved for quarterbacks. But, I was a little nervous taking him in the leagues I took him in, but I was going to believe in it. But there's other guys that just, were there, we didn't grab. So I'm starting to regret that purchase right now, unless he starts to really turn things around.
The talk in the preseason was that this was going to be a bigger year, even though he had a big year last year, that this was going to be even bigger.
Right.
And I think the Fitz injury kind of threw everything up. When they put in Heineke, it just changed that offense. And I think had Ryan Fitzpatrick stayed healthy, we might have seen a different Antonio Gibson. Obviously, you can't stop a stress fracture in your shin, but I think that might have had something to do with it. Cyclops, Allen Robinson, your number one disappointment. I don't know if we lost.
Can you hear us?
Yep, no, I'm here. I'm back.
So,
You were so
Allen
disappointed you
Robinson.
couldn't even talk.
Yeah, exactly. He was speechless. He was crying on the inside.
Yeah.
Talk about Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson. I mean, this guy has been a bust with a capital B, right? He has been that guy who was getting 10, 11, 12 catches a game. It seems like his whole career, right? So this wasn't in our league, but this is in my second league that I'm part of. And, you know, I think he was a third round pick, maybe fourth round pick, whatever it was still pretty high. And this guy hasn't cracked 10 points in a game yet this year as a wide receiver. I mean, it's absolutely awful. He hasn't gotten more than 63 yards receiving. So he, to me, has been my number one bust for this year.
Yeah.
Or disappointment.
Yeah. And, you know, I was always afraid to draft Allen Robinson because he never really had a quarterback. And I'm thinking, okay, he's still, you know, now he had going into the season, a veteran quarterback. So he's going to do even better than he did before. And then when Fields came in, we're thinking, okay, he's just going to just throw it up in the air to Robinson. And it's not happening. In fact, before we came on, I don't know if it was you or if it was 2020 saying that somebody dropped him.
He was dropped in our league that we share a team, Brad. Yep.
Right. Yeah.
You know what's really interesting, though? Of course, you could chalk this up to quarterback play. You're going to chalk this up to quarterback play because Robinson's a very talented wide receiver. But what's interesting is Mooney is having a much better year than him with the same quarterback throwing both of them the balls. So that's the part that's really hard to understand, that it is poor quarterback play causing his numbers. But Mooney is nearly startable as a flex option wide receiver
Allen
3.
Robinson.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Also, their coaching is absolutely maybe some of the worst I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's bad, and it's a shame because he's a good coach. But
all right, so we do have a couple people chiming in here. Nick says, "What's up, guys? Hey, Nick, how are you?" We have Angelo asking, "Is Antonio Brown playing this week?" I don't know that we. Go ahead.
No, we don't know. We don't have. I don't have the practice report from Tampa Bay as far as today goes. But being that it's Tuesday, I wouldn't be surprised. He's the kind of guy that could probably sit all the way through Thursday or Friday and still start. So, you know, if the question that you're having, Angelo, is you have to start somebody Thursday, you know, I would err on the side of making sure that you start somebody who is healthy. That being said, if Antonio Brown is going to play, he is a must start.
Yeah, it's a good game. They'll be using him. Right. A few more questions came in.
Yep. Let's throw Travis's up there. This is a long one. Let's see. He says, "My brother keeps wanting me to trade Williams. He's offered Patterson this time." What's that?
Javonte Williams or Mike Williams or?
I assume it's Mike Williams.
I don't know.
Should I ask for someone else? Go ahead.
He also has Henry and DK, who I only see myself really trading for. I also have more Debo, Jefferson, and Godwin.
And his brother
the thing
also
with
has
that
Elliott.
trade with, if it's Mike Williams for Patterson, at least, you know, you have a running back. It looks like you just mentioned Henry. I don't know if he's your only running back. Oh, no. You have like 1,000 running backs.
He's got Cook. He's got Jonathan Taylor. He's got James Robinson. He's got someone else.
And do nothing for the rest of the season. And
you're done. Yeah, no, you're good.
Just let's like best ball now. Just go ahead and set your lineups each week, and you're good to go.
Although if you could trade like a Mike Williams, I don't know what your receivers are, but like Mike Williams and I don't know, maybe not Cook, like Robinson to get Henry. You know, you're talking about the best running back in fantasy right now. It's worth looking at, but you're more powerful at running back than wide. I know you've got Jefferson, Debo. Yeah, if you could trade Mike Williams and not Jonathan Taylor or Cook, but Robinson, or I forget who your fourth one was. It was really decent. to get
Now,
Derrick
Travis,
Henry
I
do
don't,
that.
because your team is so good, you probably don't have any disappointments. But I'm curious if you have any disappointments this year. Is there anything that you did wrong that you wish you could have changed? One of the next thing that I'm going to talk about is Jamar Chase. Completely undervaluing Chase. In fact, we sat here in preseason and we made a bet between the three of us, which of the rookie receivers between Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Jamar Chase are going to have the best season. The jury is still out, but it's looking very good for Brad to get his dollar because he picked, or $2, because he chose Jamar Chase, I chose Devontae Smith.
And I chose Jalen Waddle. And up until 2 weeks ago, the difference between Chase and Waddle points-wise was only about 25, 30 points. So there, because Waddle's not doing bad, but Chase is another level. He is all world right now with what he's doing with Joe Burrow.
Right. When I was talking about undervaluing, I'm not talking about it for this trade. I mean, sorry, for the bet that we made. But because in the preseason, he was dropping everything. We weren't sure if Burrow was going to be healthy. We didn't know what that offensive line was going to protect. He was part of a receiving core with Higgins and Boyd. When was Chase going to get the ball? So there were all these things working against it. But you know what? Sometimes logic doesn't matter in fantasy football. And if you were smart enough like Brad to grab Jamar Chase, then you are reaping the benefits of that. So that's my second biggest disappointment. Now, 2020, you mentioned Chris Carson. Are you talking about the injury or just?
No, honestly, even when he wasn't doing bad when he was healthy. My problem with Chris Carson, and he actually is my number one disappointment, even more than Antonio Gibson, because Gibson hasn't been awful. I had Carson last year, and the issue with Carson is exactly the fact that he doesn't ever stay healthy. And just by the sheer fact of the amount of leagues that I have him in. I've got him in so many leagues, and right now he's currently wide receiver number 44. Why? Because yet again, he doesn't stay healthy. And then the issue is when he comes back, I have his numbers. I mean, he's doing okay. Week 1, 13.7 points. Week 2 and 3, 16 and 16. Those are good numbers if he can keep that. But the question on him is, will he stay healthy? And I got bit by him last year. And just based on where I was getting him in the third round, which I thought was really good value for him, on like 4 teams. And I should have just diversified and said, this guy is injury prone. Even though he's a baller, I shouldn't have taken him so many places because I like the value. And that's the reason why, because he doesn't stay healthy. And then when he comes back, is it going to be him and Collins splitting now? Who knows?
And that's the problem, is that you have this asset in Chris Carson that his biggest upside is his past, what he's done years ago, right? And can he be that guy again? In other words, if you were going to trade him, you have to convince somebody that this is not this year's Chris Carson. This is not last year's Chris Carson. This is 2 years ago Chris Carson, who you're getting in this trade. And unfortunately, he's now got this stigma of being injury prone, and he's going to be hard. Yeah. It's going to be hard to play. He's going to be hard to start, and he's going to be hard to trade. So,
but when he plays, even this year, his numbers are good. Like I said, almost 14 points, 16.
But are they good where what the other running backs were available at the time? Maybe if he was in that Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin group.
Oh, he's way above them.
But I think Henderson went after Chris Carson.
It's funny you say that because he did, and that was my big thing. I actually have Henderson right afterwards, where a lot of those leagues that I took Carson, I had my eye on Henderson, but everything the way I ranked in ADP, he could have been had in like a round or two later, and I got Henderson in 2-3 leagues, but I could have had him everywhere where I had Carson, and I should have just taken him. Carson comes back. He will be. The question is, when is he coming back? Neck issues are no joke. You don't know when that's going to happen. And now with Russell Wilson out, who knows what's going to be? It's just a mess over there.
Okay, so Travis, I asked you what your biggest disappointment was, and you said it's benching the wrong players every week and starting to click again. Let me make something clear, Travis. The reason that it looks like you're starting the wrong guys is because you have a very strong bench. Right. So it's very difficult to say, oh, man, I should have started Cook instead of Eckler, or vice versa. that's not making the wrong decision, right? Because you can't predict that. You can do your best analysis. You can listen to the buzz. You can read the news. You can do whatever. It's when you start somebody like Herbert instead of Cook. When you start, those are the wrong decisions. It's not when you start a good guy over another good guy. I mean, obviously, unless the matchup is blatant and it's telling you to start. But we saw that with Detroit and the Rams, right? Who thought that game would be that close?
Right.
That the Rams defense, a lot of people picked up the Rams defense or started the Rams defense, and they did nothing against Detroit. So some matchups you don't know. You never know. So,
and you never say, something, it's a really good point. And this is one of the biggest things in fantasy is to not get cute. Always start your studs. Don't get finessey. It's like in poker, when you have a 7-2 offsuit, you fold it, but on the flop comes 2 2s and a 7. You still did the right move. Yeah. More, if you look at when you make those decisions, you're not going to win every time, but 7, 8 out of 10 times, you starting your studs. You follow each week consensus rankings, like COmmish said. Watch the buzz. Never be upset and say I started the wrong guy. No, you started the right guy, because 75% of the time it is the right move. The couple times it isn't, that's just fantasy football, and you can't overreact to that. It's a big deal.
All right, so Nick wants to know the number one waiver ad for this week. If we're not talking position, if we're just talking about the number one waiver ad, I would think that it would have to be either Desean Watson, or if you need somebody to stream, one of the Green Bay receivers. What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, I was looking at Randall Cobb.
Yeah.
Right? Because some of the other guys are either splitting time or quarterbacks. There's probably several quarterbacks to stream for this week. I mean, Watson isn't a pickup for this week. So, yeah, I'm looking at Randall Cobb as the potential number one stream for this week.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I can't say Tanyan, but I feel like he's going to have a really big game. He's there now for a few years, and he's been literally a ghost this season until this last week. But he could have a really big game as well if you need a tight end. But I probably would go Cobb. Yes.
All right, so let's run through these real quick. Brad, Mike Davis, I think this is a pretty obvious one.
Very obvious. A lot of people had him on their radar because it's a team that has to throw, and he was getting all these catches last year in Carolina. I don't think anybody saw the journeyman Cordell Patterson doing what he's doing. I mean, nobody saw that. I can't imagine he was
drafted in no leagues.
In maybe 2% of leagues, right? Maybe for some reason, but man, he's averaging 10 or essentially about 9 or 10 points a game, which for a guy who was probably drafted in your third and fourth rounds is not good. As your second running back, most likely he was your second running back taken. Right. So very, very disappointed and trying not to start him as much as I can.
All right. So back to me real quick. My third disappointment was undervaluing Cooper Kupp. And I wasn't just me undervaluing him. He had an ADP coming in to the draft of around 50, which meant 6th round. In our big league, he went in the 6th round. So, if you had a redraft, which is something we can talk about doing maybe in a few weeks, but if we had a redraft, I'm sorry for the show, if we had a redraft, where would Cooper Kupp go, guys? Is Cooper Kupp going as the number one receiver before Hill, before Diggs,
or Adams,
before Jefferson, I don't think it goes before Adams, right?
Doesn't go before Adams, but if he does this all year, absolutely.
I don't see how he does
and you know what? I don't see how he does it either. Yeah. But it's so hard because you know what it is. If Goff was coming back, right now it would be Woods. But with Matt Stafford and a new quarterback, we had no idea who was going to dominate, and it's so weird that Woods is such an unbelievable afterthought in this offense with all the passing yards going on.
I'm
Nobody
surprised.
could have predicted that. If you look at 10 drafts, 9 out of 10 have to have Woods going before Kupp, considering what Kupp did last year. So,
absolutely.
yeah, really hard to predict that.
Kupp started off, if I remember correctly, started off really hot last year and then kind of faded.
Not really hot. He had a couple. Okay, I had Kupp in a league last year.
I think it was a dip because I traded him and then he got good again. So I think he started out well, had a dip, and then got good at the end. And it would not be a Tuesday night on the Buzz podcast if 2020 did not mention a San Francisco running back. Right. You have him as a mistake and a disappointment. I know you personally drafted Raheem Mostert late in the draft, or middle of the draft. I don't remember exactly where, but
yeah, and again, much like Chris Carson, just because I thought I was getting such value locking down my RB3 flex, I must have had Raheem Mostert in 5 leagues because I kept getting him like in the 5th or 6th round, and I knew this was the starting guy, and if he stayed healthy, they were going to lean on him. And in several of those leagues, I said, you know something? Mostert goes down. I got Trey Sermon, and I think like the 8th or 9th rounds of a lot of them. So I said, if Mostert goes down, I have my insurance policy. What happens? Mostert doesn't go down first game. He goes down, I think, in the first quarter. Typical Raheem Mostert. Might have been the first series. And what happens? Sermon inactive. Next week inactive. And what is it? It becomes my guy Elijah Mitchell. And that'd be fine. But I only got him in 1 league because he went for $82 and $87 in the other 2 leagues I was in. So my plan of locking down that San Francisco backfield, getting Mostert and Sermon as the insurance policy, really hurt in 4 or 5 leagues. Very surprisingly, Trey Sermon is not the Javonte Williams to Melvin Gordon that we thought he might be, or what ATN might have been to Robinson. So big regrets there, because you know what you're getting with Mostert. An absolute baller if he stays healthy, but again, as a really big if.
All right, so our last one is Keenan Allen. Brad, he's your third disappointment.
He is my third disappointment. Now, he started off the season with games of like averaging around 15 points, which is good, right?
No, it's I would say that's okay. That's a good.
It's not bad.
That's for a wide receiver 2. That's good.
But he's a wide receiver 1.
Wide receiver 1. I get that, but now he's fallen down in his last 3 games to averaging like 7 points a game. So like half of that. And I don't understand it. But obviously Mike Williams is having big games and they're throwing more to Eckler. And so to me, overall for the season so far, big disappointment.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Averaging 11, 12 points a game is not going to cut it for Keenan Allen for what you drafted him for. He's a wide receiver 2, fringe 3 at this point if you're only averaging 11 points per game. I think he's somebody that you could probably buy low if you're looking to trade. I do think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to come back. But I think it's just a matter of being patient with him.
It's a very similar situation to the Rams, where Cooper Kupp is just dominating over Woods, where Williams is dominating over Keenan Allen. So
you would see him in both of those situations that it would level out a little bit as the season goes. But you can only go on the history we have at the moment, right? We just don't know.
So I figured it'd be fun to end today's show with a fun new segment called Fun Facts for You. So these are going to be just a few quick hitting facts that were either about week 7 or through week 7. So here's the first one. Cooper Kupp, through 7 weeks, has more fantasy points for the season than any other player, any other wide receiver in NFL history through 7 games this season. No, these aren't true or false.
No, I'm just making it interactive, that's all.
Okay. Patrick Mahomes has more turnovers through 7 games than he had in all of 2018 and 2019 combined.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And what do you think that's attributed to?
I think what it's attributed to is the offensive line is terrible, and he's used to going back,
It's
scout,
supposed to be new, revamped, better than,
it's terrible.
It's
It's
new and
terrible.
revamped. That's for sure.
Yeah. So who was in standard scoring format, 6 points per passing touchdown, 25 yards a point with no bonuses? Who was the QB1 last week? See if you know.
QB1 last week?
No
Correct.
idea. I'm not looking it up, so
You're wearing their jersey, Commish. Tua Tagovailoa.
wow.
Again, 6 points per touchdown. That's 4 touchdowns. No bonuses for 300 or 400 yards, what have you. He was the number one fantasy quarterback last
actually
week.
Waddle, but I get.
I said that team's jersey. That team's
when
jersey.
you're throwing for 4 touchdowns, absolutely.
Yeah, but I think it's very cool. Tua was number one. Okay, here's a really interesting fact. Last week, the top 20 scoring fantasy running backs, so the top 20 scoring for week 7, 4 of those 20 were drafted in the first 2 rounds of fantasy football this year. 4 of the top 20 running backs would have been drafted in the first 2 rounds from week 7. The 4 are Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, DeAndre Swift, and Jonathan Taylor. The other 16 running backs that finished in the top 20 would not have been drafted in the first 2 rounds. I find that unbelievable. To me, that's just a staggering fact. If you want to know who the top 20 running backs were, it was Kamara, so that's one of them of the 4. But Damien Harris, Dearness Johnson, Swift, that made 2, Eli Mitchell, Khalil Herbert, Jonathan Taylor, that was the 3rd, and Derrick Henry was the 4th. But then it's Brandon Bolden, Leonard Fournette, Myles Gaskin, Kenyon Drake, J.J. Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams, Samaj P Ryan, Devontae Booker, and Cordell Patterson. 4 running backs of the top 20 in week 7 would have been drafted in the first 2 rounds. How's that for parity in the NFL?
That's crazy. It's also scary, but if
It
you
is.
don't have, because
All
I know
right.
the first 4 picks, usually
So,
you're excited. What was that, Brad?
Oh, sorry, no. Jason has a couple comments here. We didn't want him. We do see your comments here, Jason. Go ahead. Sorry, I have to see.
BMWG is getting wonky
Sorry.
again. Josh Palmer, bless you, is a nice buy low. I guess you're talking about the Chargers. Let me see. Cup is placing teams in first, and will lose the playoffs for the exact same.
I hope so. I have no piece of it anywhere.
We're in a bloodbath season. Running back should be cuffed across all formats. And
That's exactly
I was
right.
looking at a stat. It's really no different than every other year. It's just that it's happening right now. So we have this selective memory, or this very short memory of how things were last year and the year before. I mean, it's just it constantly happens. And I agree. You have to handcuff your running backs, especially if you have the top running backs.
Cook.
I'm sure most people who got
Cook took Madison, Zeke took Pollard. Right.
With Henry, by the way,
Evans.
People don't even think about the idea that it's possible that he could get hurt. We know that, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Darrington Evans, he actually is back. He was hurt for a while, and if anything happens to Henry, Evans is the guy. So if you were looking to handcuff Henry, then Darrington Evans is actually somebody you could pick up now and stash if you have the spot.
Yep. Your son, I have him in the league, and I just want to repeat something that Noah said that I thought was brilliant. I'm not playing for anything but to go all out. I mean, we're always playing for a championship. And it's moves like that, having dead weight on your roster, these wide receivers that don't, Pascal and, Paris Kimmel, whatever, the guys that are sitting there, drop them and go out and get those running back handcuffs. If they're still out there, they're so much more valuable. Play to win it all.
All right. On that note, we are going to end the Buzz podcast tonight. We're hopefully going to be back Sunday. If not, we will see you Tuesday night. In the meantime, if you have questions or comments, we're always listening. We're always reading them, and they're always welcome on our YouTube page or on our YouTube page or our Facebook page as well. Sorry about that. I had a little brain fart. Guys, any final words?
See you Sunday, and good luck with your players on Thursday night.
That's right. Go get those guys off the waivers.
All right. So Jason, Travis, Kenneth, Nick, Luke, Brad Montgomery, Jay, Daniel, we really appreciate all the feedback. If I missed somebody, I'm sorry, but thank you all for joining the show and being a part of it. We really do appreciate it.
You missed Brad from North Carolina.